Carlos Andriano didn't do fear. He'd stared down rival dons, orchestrated hits in broad daylight, and built his empire on the bones of men who underestimated him. But as he stood in his penthouse office that November evening, watching Stella cross the marble floor toward his desk, something cold and unfamiliar coiled in his gut. The city sprawled below him through floor-to-ceiling windows, his city, bought with blood and intimidation. Streetlights flickered on like scattered diamonds, and somewhere out there 3 of his crews were collecting deaths, enforcing territory, maintaining the fear that kept the Andriano name untouchable. Everything was under control. Everything except the woman walking toward him in a gray housemaid's uniform. Stella Stewart had worked in his penthouse for 8 months. She cleaned his guns, scrubbed bloodstains from his marble entryway, and never asked questions. That discretion had attracted him initially, that and the way she moved through his violent world without flinching, as if she'd seen worse. Their affair had started 3 months ago, explosive and reckless, stolen hours when his guards changed shifts. He told himself it meant nothing. She was convenient, forgettable, but she wasn't walking like someone forgettable now. She stopped at his desk, didn't sit, didn't speak, and placed something on the mahogany surface. Carlos's eyes dropped to it. An ultrasound image, black and white, showing a tiny curved form suspended in darkness. His vision tunneled. The room temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. "I'm 8 weeks pregnant." Her voice was steady, but her fingers trembled as she withdrew her hand from the photograph. "The baby is yours, Mr. Andriano." Carlos had executed men for less than this. A complication, a liability, a weakness his enemies could exploit. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, and for the first time in his adult life, the man who controlled everything found himself completely paralyzed. Carlos didn't speak for 30 seconds. He stared at the ultrasound image as if it were a court summons, a death warrant in miniature. Then his hand moved to the desk drawer, muscle memory taking over when his mind couldn't. He pulled out a thick manila envelope, emergency cash, always kept ready for situations that required immediate solutions. "How much do you need?" His voice came out flat, transactional. This was business. Everything was business. Stella's face crumpled for just a moment before she rebuilt it into something harder. "I'm not asking for money. I'm telling you that you're going to be a father." "No." The word was final, absolute. "I'm not. You're going to take this and disappear. There's 20,000 in here, enough to start over somewhere far from here." "Carlos." "Mr. Andriano." He stood, buttoning his suit jacket, reassembling the armor. "We had fun, Stella, but you knew what this was. I never promised you anything." She stared at him, tears finally breaking through. "I loved you." "Then you were stupid." He pushed the envelope across the desk. "My driver will take you wherever you want to go. Pack your things. You have an hour." After she left his office, Carlos made 2 phone calls. The first was to his head of security. "The housemaid is leaving tonight. Make sure she gets on a bus out of the city. I want confirmation she's gone, but nobody touches her. Understand?" The second call was to his HR contact who handled the household staff. "Stella Stewart is terminated effective immediately. Severance already paid. Erase her employment records." An hour later, he watched from his window as Stella emerged from the service entrance with a single battered suitcase. His driver stood beside a black sedan, but she waved him off. Pride, even now. She walked 4 blocks to the bus station on foot. Carlos tracked her through security cameras his people controlled. She bought a ticket to somewhere called Millbrook, a working-class neighborhood 2 hours north that he'd never heard of. The bus pulled away at 11:47 p.m., and his phone buzzed with confirmation. Target departed. No complications. He poured himself 3 fingers of scotch and stood at the window until dawn, telling himself he felt nothing. The ultrasound image still sat on his desk. He should burn it, should shred it and scatter the ashes. Instead, he slid it into his desk drawer and locked it. That night, he dreamed of a child crying in an empty room and woke up with his heart pounding like he'd just survived an ambush. He didn't dream often, and when he did, it was never about things that mattered. This meant nothing. It had to mean nothing. 6 years passed like a slow bleed. Carlos expanded his empire with surgical precision. He absorbed the Castellano family's smuggling routes after their Don disappeared into the harbor wearing concrete shoes. He negotiated a truce with the Russians that gave him control of the port district. He eliminated competitors, silenced witnesses, and transformed the Andriano name into something that made grown men cross themselves. His father nodded approval from his villa in Sicily. The family business had never been stronger. But the nightmares came every few months without warning. Always the same dream, a baby crying in darkness, the sound growing more desperate, more accusing. He'd search through endless corridors, opening doors that led to more doors, the crying always just out of reach. He'd wake at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat, his hand reaching for the gun under his pillow before he remembered there was no threat, just ghosts. He never opened the desk drawer where the ultrasound lived, but he never threw it away either. His associates noticed changes. He drank more, slept less. Twice he nearly killed men for minor infractions, stopping himself only at the last moment with a control that left him shaking. His underboss suggested a vacation. Carlos broke the man's nose. "I'm fine," he'd say, and everyone believed him because they had to. 200 miles away, Stella Stewart learned what survival actually meant. The apartment above Lou's laundromat had 1 bedroom, a kitchen the size of a closet, and walls so thin she could hear her neighbors' arguments word for word. It cost $800 a month, which meant she worked 3 jobs to keep Sophia fed and clothed. Morning shift at the diner, 5 a.m. to 1 p.m., slinging eggs and coffee to truckers, who sometimes tipped, sometimes didn't. Afternoon shift cleaning offices downtown, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., scrubbing toilets in buildings she could never afford to work in. Evening shift at the grocery store, 7 p.m. to midnight, stocking shelves while Sophia stayed with Mrs. Chen next door, an elderly woman who charged $5 an hour and fed Sophia dumplings. Stella slept 4 hours a night if she was lucky. Her hands were raw from bleach and dish soap. She'd lost 20 pounds she couldn't afford to lose. But Sophia was healthy. Sophia was bright. Sophia had everything Stella could give her, which wasn't much, but it was honest. At night, after picking Sophia up from Mrs. Chen's, Stella would read to her daughter from library books about princesses and adventures. Sophia would ask about her father, she always asked, and Stella would say, "He's far away, baby, but he'd love you if he knew you." It was the kindest lie she had left. The Andriano Family Foundation launched on a Tuesday with a press release about giving back to the community. It was Marcus Chen's idea, Carlos's accountant, and the only man in the organization with a legitimate MBA. They needed somewhere to funnel the casino profits, the protection money, the revenue streams that couldn't be explained to the IRS. "Charity is perfect," Marcus had explained, spreading spreadsheets across Carlos's desk. "We donate to halfway houses, youth centers, women's shelters. The money goes in dirty, comes out clean, and we look like saints. Plus, the tax breaks are incredible." Carlos signed the papers without reading them. He didn't care about optics or tax breaks. He cared about the feds who'd been circling his operations for 18 months, looking for financial irregularities. The foundation would give them something legitimate to find. 6 months later, the foundation had donated $2.3 million to various causes. Carlos had shaken hands with nonprofit directors, posed for photographs with inner-city kids, and sat through excruciating charity dinners where people thanked him for his generosity. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so tedious. Marcus appeared in his office on a Wednesday afternoon with his laptop and an eager expression that Carlos had learned to distrust. "We need a PR boost," Marcus said, pulling up a chair uninvited. "Local news is doing a segment on community heroes, people making a difference. If we can get the foundation featured, it'll cement our reputation. Plus, it'll look great if the feds come sniffing." "I don't have time for this." "You don't have to do anything. Just watch the segment, pick someone we can partner with for a photo op, 5 minutes of your time." Carlos gestured impatiently. Marcus turned the laptop around and pressed play. The segment opened with saccharine music and a perky reporter standing in front of a small building with peeling paint. "Community heroes," the banner read. "Tonight, we meet Stella Stewart, who turned tragedy into triumph." Carlos's blood turned to ice. She appeared on screen, older but unmistakable. Her hair was pulled back, her face more angular than he remembered, worn by years of work he could see in her eyes. She stood in front of a handmade sign. "Sophia's Place Daycare. Safe care for working families. 6 years ago, I was homeless and pregnant. Now I run this daycare for single mothers who need affordable childcare, because everyone deserves a second chance." The camera panned and Carlos stopped breathing. A little girl appeared beside Stella, maybe 6 years old, with dark hair and eyes that were unmistakably Andriano eyes, sharp, intense, haunting. She smiled at the camera, missing her front tooth. "This is my daughter Sophia," Stella said, her hand resting on her girl's shoulder. "She's my reason for everything." Marcus was still talking about partnership opportunities and PR strategies, but Carlos couldn't hear him over the roaring in his ears. Carlos replayed the video 17 times. Each viewing brought new details that carved themselves into his consciousness. The way Sophia tucked her hair behind her ear, exactly like his mother used to do. The proud lift of her chin when the reporter asked if she liked helping at the daycare. The gap-toothed smile that somehow carried the same crooked angle as his own. But it was the eyes that destroyed him. Dark, penetrating, ancient eyes in a child's face. Andriano eyes. His grandfather had them in the portrait that hung in Don Andriano's study. His father had them. Carlos saw them every morning in the mirror. Now they stared at him from a 6-year-old girl standing in front of a daycare with peeling paint and second-hand toys scattered in the yard. "Boss?" Marcus's voice cut through the fog. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Carlos closed the laptop with more force than necessary. "Where is this place?" Millbrook, about 2 hours north. Kind of a rough neighborhood, but the story's good. Single mom makes good, helps other single moms. Very feel good. We could donate some playground equipment, get our name on Get Out." Marcus blinked. "What?" "Leave, now." The accountant grabbed his laptop and fled. Smart man. Carlos sat alone in his office as afternoon bled into evening. He didn't turn on the lights, didn't pour a drink, didn't move except to breathe, and even that felt like an effort. 6 years. She'd been surviving in Millbrook for 6 years, 2 hours away, raising his daughter on what must be poverty wages based on the condition of that building, while he'd been expanding territory and eliminating rivals and sleeping on silk sheets. His child had been growing up in a neighborhood he'd probably used as a dumping ground for bodies. The thought made him physically ill. He pulled up the news station's website and found the full segment. 4 minutes and 32 seconds. The reporter interviewed Stella about her journey. Fled an abusive situation, she said diplomatically, and Carlos flinched. They showed the interior of the daycare, mismatched furniture, donated books, crayon drawings taped to walls that needed paint. Sophia appeared throughout, helping younger children with blocks, reading a story with intense concentration, laughing as she pushed a toddler on a broken swing set. His daughter, reading, laughing, living a life he knew nothing about. The video ended with Stella's closing statement. "We survive by helping each other. That's what community means. That's what I want Sophia to understand, that even when the world is cruel, we don't have to be." The words felt like an indictment. Carlos picked up his phone and called his driver. "Prepare the car. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. "Destination, boss?"
Carlos stared at the frozen image of Sophia's face on his computer screen. Millbrook. That's not our territory. You want security detail? No, just you and me, and tell no one where we're going.
The black SUV looked obscene parked on the cracked asphalt of Millbrook's streets. Carlos watched a junkie eye the vehicle from a doorway, calculate the risk, then shuffle away. Smart. That's it, boss. His driver, Vincent, pointed to a converted house at the end of the block. The hand-painted sign swayed in the morning breeze. Sophia's Place Daycare. A chain-link fence enclosed a small yard filled with playground equipment that had seen better days. Circle the block. Come back in 10 minutes. Vincent knew better than to argue. The SUV pulled away, leaving Carlos alone with his cowardice. He'd planned to walk up immediately, knock on the door, face Stella like a man. But when the daycare opened at 7 a.m. and parents started dropping off children, he found himself frozen in the driver's seat, watching from across the street like a stalker. Sophia appeared at 7:15, propping the front door open and greeting each parent by name. She wore jeans and a sweater that had been mended at the elbow. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked tired. She looked beautiful. She looked like someone who'd survived a war. Then Sophia burst out the door at 8:30, backpack bouncing, and Carlos forgot how to breathe. She was real, not a photograph or a video, but flesh and blood, running across the small yard to grab a soccer ball. She kicked it against the fence with surprising force, retrieved it, kicked again, focused, determined, a little fighter. Another girl joined her, smaller, maybe 4, and Sophia immediately slowed the game down, teaching her how to position her foot. Patient, kind, nothing like the world she'd been born into. Carlos watched for 3 hours. He watched Sophia help a crying toddler find his toy truck. Watched her eat lunch at a picnic table with the other kids, laughing at something one of them said. Watched her sit cross-legged in the grass with a book, reading aloud to a semicircle of mesmerized children. She had his mother's laugh, bright and uninhibited, his father's stubborn set to her jaw when another kid tried to take the ball, and those eyes, constantly observing, analyzing, seeing more than a 6-year-old should have to see. Vincent returned twice, idling nearby, waiting for orders that never came. The third time, he approached the driver's window. "Boss, we've been here 4 hours. Someone's going to notice." Carlos didn't look away from Sophia, who was now pushing a younger child on the swing, counting each arc in Spanish. "Does she look like me?" Vincent followed his gaze, a long pause. "Yeah, she does. I didn't know I had a daughter until yesterday." Another pause, heavier this time. "What are you going to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? Carlos had orchestrated hits, negotiated treaties, destroyed families without hesitation. But watching his 6-year-old daughter play in a yard he should have been providing for all along, he had absolutely no idea what to do. "I don't know. I don't fucking know." Carlos waited until the last parent collected their child at 5:47 p.m. He watched Stella usher Sophia inside, then begin her closing routine, locking the gate, collecting forgotten toys from the yard, turning off the exterior lights. Normal, domestic actions that felt like watching someone's life through a window he'd never be invited through. He crossed the street as she bent to pick up a plastic shovel. "Hello, Stella." She straightened so fast she nearly dropped the shovel. For 1 second, her face held pure shock, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, frozen in disbelief. Then recognition crashed through her like a physical blow, and the shock transformed into something else entirely. Rage. Pure, incandescent rage. "No!" The word came out sharp as a blade. "No! You don't get to be here!" Carlos raised his hands, palms out, the universal gesture of peace. It felt absurd. He'd held men at gunpoint with steadier hands. "I just want to talk." You want to She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You threw money at me and told me to disappear. I disappeared. We're done talking. I saw the news segment. I saw Sophia. Something shifted in her expression, protective and feral. Don't you dare say her name. She's my daughter. She's my daughter. Stella took 3 steps toward him, closing the distance until they were separated by the chain-link fence. You made your choice 6 years ago. You called me stupid for loving you. You sent me away pregnant with $20,000 like I was a problem you could pay to solve. Well, congratulations, Carlos. Problem solved. Now get the fuck away from my daycare before I call the police. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. Her hands gripped the fence, knuckles white. I was terrified. I was alone. I didn't know if I could keep her fed or housed or safe. And you were what? Building your empire? Counting your money? Did you think about me even once? The truth was worse than lying. Every day. She recoiled like he'd slapped her. Don't you dare try to make this romantic. You thought about me and did nothing. That's worse than forgetting. I was wrong. You think? You think you were wrong? Tears cut tracks down her face, but her voice stayed steady, furious. She asks about you constantly. Where's my daddy? Why doesn't daddy want me? And I lie to her. I tell her you're far away, that you'd love her if you knew her. I make excuses for you because I can't bear to tell a 6-year-old that her father threw us away. Carlos felt something crack inside his chest. Let me fix this. You can't fix this. You can't unabandon your child. You can't rewind 6 years. Stella wiped her eyes roughly. Leave, Carlos, and don't come back. She turned and walked toward the building, leaving him gripping the fence like it was the only thing holding him upright.
Carlos came back the next day, and the day after that. Each time, Stella told him to leave. Each time, he stayed across the street, watching his daughter through the fence, until Stella's fury burned hot enough that she had to confront him or call the police. On the 4th day, she made a different choice. Fine, you want to talk? Come inside. But Sophia's at Mrs. Chen's for another hour, and if you're still here when she gets back, I'm calling every cop in Millbrook. The apartment was worse than he'd imagined. 1 bedroom visible through an open door, a bathroom he could see from the entrance, a kitchen that was barely an alcove. The furniture was thrift store quality. The carpet was stained. The whole place couldn't have been more than 500 square feet. His daughter lived here. His daughter, who should have had everything. But it was the refrigerator that destroyed him. Every inch was covered in photographs, layered like shingles, chronicling 6 years he'd missed. Stella, exhausted in a hospital bed, holding a newborn with a shock of dark hair. Sophia at 1, covered in birthday cake. Sophia at 2, missing her first tooth. 3, 4, 5, each year documented in cheap photo prints and candid phone pictures. Sophia's first day of school, backpack almost as big as she was. Sophia at the beach, building a sandcastle. Sophia asleep on this very couch, clutching a stuffed rabbit with 1 ear missing. Sophia dressed as a princess for Halloween. Sophia helping at the daycare. Sophia laughing, crying, growing, living. Every single moment without him. She has my eyes, Carlos said, his voice hoarse. I know. Stella stood on the opposite side of the tiny living room, arms crossed defensively. They're so dark, so intense. Old soul eyes, they say. What does she know about me? Nothing? Everything? I don't know. Stella's defenses cracked slightly. She knows she has a father somewhere. She knows he's far away and very busy. She knows he doesn't call or visit. She stopped asking why around age 4. Now she just asks when. The words hit like bullets. What do you tell her? That I don't know, because I don't. Stella moved to the refrigerator, touching a photo of Sophia grinning gap-toothed at the camera. She's smart, Carlos. Scary smart. She reads at a third-grade level already. She's protective of the younger kids at the daycare like a little mother. She's stubborn and fierce, and she doesn't take shit from anyone. She sounds like you. She sounds like both of us. That's the problem. Stella turned to face him. She has your eyes, your temper, your intensity, and I see you in her every single day, and it kills me, because she deserves to know her father, and her father is a man who threw us away. Carlos stepped closer, careful, like approaching a wounded animal. I was scared. I was terrified, but I didn't run. I know.
Carlos was in Stella's apartment when his phone rang with the tone he'd programmed for one person only, his father. He silenced it, but Stella caught the flash of fear across his face. "You need to take that," she said quietly. "Not now." The phone rang again immediately. Then a text. "My office, 1 hour, not a request." Carlos stood, the weight of what was coming settling onto his shoulders like a burial shroud. "I have to go, but I'm coming back tomorrow." "Carlos, what's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything. I don't know yet." He paused at the door. "Don't take Sophia out alone for the next few days. Stay where there are people." Her face went pale. What does that mean? But he was already gone. Don Andriano's office occupied the top floor of a restaurant the family had owned for 40 years. Legitimate business in front, family business in back. Carlos's grandfather had built this room, and his father had inherited it along with the empire. The walls were lined with portraits of dead patriarchs, all watching with Andriano eyes. His father sat behind a desk of carved walnut, a tumbler of whiskey in one hand and a folder in the other. 3 of his oldest soldiers stood against the wall. This wasn't a conversation. This was a tribunal. 6 visits in 4 days, Don Andriano said without preamble, tossing the folder across the desk. Surveillance photos spilled out. Carlos outside the daycare, Carlos talking to Stella, Carlos staring through a chain-link fence like a lovesick teenager. To a slum in Millbrook, to see a housemaid and her bastard. Carlos kept his voice level. "My daughter." The old man's fist slammed the desk hard enough to rattle the whiskey glass. "You have no daughter. You have a liability that could destroy everything we've built. She's 6 years old. She's a target." His father stood, veins bulging in his neck. "Do you think the Russos don't have eyes in Millbrook? Do you think the Castellanos haven't noticed the head of the Andriano family making sentimental visits to a woman with a child? They'll use her, you stupid boy. They'll take that girl and send her back to you in pieces. No one knows. Everyone knows. I've already had 3 phone calls asking about your new interest in community outreach." Don Andriano moved around the desk, getting close enough that Carlos could smell the whiskey. "Fine. Bring the woman into the family properly. Marry her, legitimize the child, put them under protection. But you won't, will you? Because you're ashamed. That's not... Then what is it? Love." The word dripped with contempt. "Love makes you weak, and weakness gets you killed." Carlos's jaw tightened. "I'm not eliminating my own child." "Then I will." The old man's voice went cold, final. "You have 48 hours to bring them into the fold or make them disappear. If you can't do either, I'll handle it myself. Blood must not weaken blood, Carlos. Your grandfather understood that. I understand that. It's time you learned." The 3 soldiers shifted slightly, ready to enforce whatever order came next. Carlos left without another word, knowing the clock had just started counting down to a choice that would cost him everything, either way. Carlos spent 36 hours preparing for war. He identified which soldiers would follow him and which would stay loyal to his father. He moved money to accounts Don Andriano couldn't access. He secured a property 2 hours south, a compound that had once belonged to a rival family before Carlos wiped them out. The irony wasn't lost on him. Then he went to Millbrook one last time. Stella answered the door at midnight, alarmed. Sophia was asleep on the couch, clutching her one-eared rabbit. "What happened?" "Pack essentials. You have 20 minutes. Don't ask questions." "Carlos!" "My father knows about Sophia. He's given me an ultimatum. Bring you into the family or eliminate the problem." Those were his exact words. He met her eyes. I'm choosing option 3, which is war. She should have been terrified. Instead, she just looked tired. You're going to fight your own family over us? I should have fought for you 6 years ago. Better late than never. 23 minutes later, Vincent drove them south in an unmarked car, while Carlos followed in the SUV with 4 armed soldiers. Stella held Sophia in the back seat, the girl still half asleep and confused. "Mama, where are we going?" "Somewhere safe, baby." The confrontation came 12 hours later. Carlos returned to his father's office alone, knowing it might be the last time. Don Andriano sat in his chair, 3 soldiers behind him, a bottle of whiskey already half empty. "Where is the girl?" "Safe, under my protection." Carlos didn't sit. "Anyone who touches her answers to me." "You'd choose a bastard over your family?" "I'd choose my daughter over anything." Carlos placed his gun on the desk between them, a gesture both threatening and symbolic. "This ends now. Sophia is my blood, which makes her Andriano blood. You taught me that blood protects blood, so I'm protecting mine." The old man's hand moved toward his own weapon, but Carlos was faster, not drawing, just ready. The 3 soldiers tensed. One of them, Marco, who'd been with Carlos for 15 years, stepped away from the wall and stood beside Carlos instead. The room held its breath. Finally, Don Andriano lowered his hand. "Get out. And when the Russos come for that girl, don't expect my help. I won't need it." 3 weeks later, Carlos knelt on cracked pavement in the compound's courtyard, holding a pink bicycle steady while Sophia climbed on. She was terrified and exhilarated in equal measure, her small hands gripping the handlebars with Andriano determination. "I've got you. I won't let go until you're ready. Promise?" "Promise." He ran alongside her, one hand on the seat as she pedaled furiously. When she finally found her balance and he let go, she didn't fall. She rode in wobbly circles, laughing with pure joy, while armed guards watched from the perimeter. Stella stood in the doorway of their new home, arms crossed, expression unreadable. When Carlos glanced at her, she didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning.
If you made it this far, you just witnessed Carlos Andriano's journey from cold-blooded mafia boss to a father fighting for redemption. This story proves that sometimes the most dangerous battles aren't fought with guns, they're fought with the courage to change. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more intense, emotional tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Share this video with someone who loves powerful stories about second chances and family. What do you think? Did Carlos deserve forgiveness, or did he wait too long? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.